What's up, friends? Today we're here with a very long board. This is the Meepo MLR. And you guys have probably already seen a video on this. If you haven't yet, make sure you check out my first lick video on the Meepo MLR. This is a race board. And in this video today, I'm going to be reviewing it, telling you what it means to be a race board, who I think it's for, what its performance stacks up to, and why I think it's what racing needed. Let's jump right into it.
You make my heart beat super fast.
Now, before we get too deep into this review, let's go over some of the basic specs of this board. It's going to be a little bit different than your typical hobby wing or foreign board, I guess, because it has a JKESC for one, and it's also 16S. There's not many boards out there that are 16S. I think only Lawrence maybe has a 16S board. No, theirs was 14S. I can't think of another 16S board off the top of my head that's in a production state. But unique ESC, unique deck, unique trucks. On top of that, you have a 16S 3P of Molicel P45B, which I know for a fact no other board is using. This cell is an incredible performance cell and is able to deliver a very high amount of discharge current, which is what allows them to use such a small, relatively, battery in a board that has a 90 amp ESC. Now, I've always thought that the Chinese ESC ratings were a little bit confusing. I believe the 90 amps means that it is 90 amps per motor, so like 90 motor amps per side. I don't know what that equates to in battery amps. Maybe it's actually 90 battery amps that it draws. I don't know. It's always really confusing. I wish they would make it more clear on their website, but it is what it is. It's one of the unique features of this board, and for me, in my experience with the JK, it has been great. There have been a number of different versions of the MLR from pre-production through production. And I believe the ESC changed 3 times as it went through testing. I've seen this thing ever since the very first board delivered into California, and the Meepo / Stooge team was testing it. Some of their riders are my friends, Mario and Rux, and some of the others that were testing this at the very beginning. Gave them valuable feedback to improve their board and put in the JKESC eventually. I don't know exactly when it came in, but you have it now, and it performs well. Like I said, there's a lot of unique features, and we're going to go through them one at a time in this review. But the main things: big battery, powerful ESC, 3-link trucks, and a very unique deck. Now, any of you that are sort of savvy to the e-skate racing scene will know that this thing started causing waves right from its release. Right about when the Meepo MLR first released, it was sort of like a pre-release, and it was allowed to compete in the Electrified Race League in the stock class. And the racers, while talented, went on to win a lot of podiums in the stock class, given how much more powerful this is than most of the other boards, while also maintaining really good turnability through the 3-link trucks on specifically shorter tracks. And this is something that I think everyone wants to conquer eventually, is having a board that can go fast, 30 miles an hour to 35, while also being stable, but also being able to do hairpin turns like a DKP. Now, because this board is so long, you don't necessarily get DKP performance, but you get something similar, which on a track equates to a really good short track board. So right from the start, it came out making waves in the e-skate industry. I think some people were apprehensive when it first joined e-skate racing league, since it was like sort of aimed directly at the stock class. But since then, it's gone on to win many podiums across e-skate con and other races. And I shouldn't give the board all the credit. Of course, the riders are incredible. A lot of my friends are the riders on these boards, and they do really well. And you have to give props to them. But the board is pulling a lot of weight, and just hopping on this board will make you realize how lacking some other boards are when it comes to short track, or even when it comes to long track. Now, I wouldn't really recommend this for long track because the top speed is just not there. But, you know, you don't need a lot more than 35 miles on most short tracks. So 35 miles an hour on most short tracks. And you can definitely reach that when you have the different gear ratio on here. So as a track board, I think what I'm trying to answer here is it's highly capable. It does really well in short track, and you can push it pretty far in terms of competition. In fact, one of my other friends, Jeffrey Peralta, he placed in the pro division riding the MLR for his first time at EasyCon. He was in the lower half of it, but still really impressive for a board that only cost $2,500 and is ready to race off the shelf. Now, you do need to make sure you tighten all of your screws when you receive it, but it's ready to race other than that. The 3-link debacle of sorts that happened right when this board came out was a little confusing, I think, for most of the community, but at the end of the day, what matters is Stooge and Meepo collaborated on these 3-link trucks, and we have a product now that has gone through a couple iterations, has been race tested, and in my opinion, I think you can trust these trucks just as much as you can trust the original 3-link trucks that Stooge Raceboards creates. And I have those on my personal race board, and they're good. I think these ones have some benefits to them with their CNC clamps and some of their CNC components, making it a little bit easier to mount the drives. But you know, eventually 3-links will probably get to the point where they share some components with these. These do have pretty short links on them, and typically as 3-links go, that means that they're going to respond faster, but might not be as stable at really high speeds, like we're talking 45, 50 plus. This board can't get there, so you're never going to experience that issue. Of course, if you don't tighten your bushings correctly or you don't know how to ride, maybe you'll have some wobbling issues, but I didn't experience that on this board at all. You just need to make sure your board is set up right. So yeah, the 3-links race tested, board race tested. It performs well in its main job. Now we talked about it as a race board. What are its main selling points? Well, I kind of already said them, but we'll break it down as a couple key points. 1, 3-link trucks. This is the only board that has true Stooge approved, quote unquote, 3-link trucks that are race tested and we know they work. 2, it's very powerful. Once we get to the performance testing, you'll see that it's right up there with the most powerful VESC board I've ever tested. It does really well in 0 to 20 times, well in 0 to 30 times, and the brakes are also quite good. Although I think personally the braking curve on the remote needs a little tuning, and we did do that for our track days on this thing. And I'll show those settings with you in another video later on how I set up my Meepo MLR remote, I guess. And then 3, I guess, standing platform, the bindings, and the tires, I guess, the whole package together. It's a ready-to-go race board. So I think those are your 3 main selling points. You can hop on the track with this, have a fun time, and grow into it as the power ceiling is pretty high. The next question I want to answer in this video is the Meepo MLR for you? Now, I think the MLR is a great entry point for a lot of people in the e-skate racing scene, and I think it's a great board to have as your first racing board. The only other way you can really get a racing board, at least at the time of release of this, was to buy a Stooge race board or make one yourself. And that's a pretty high barrier to entry. With the release of this, you have a ready-made racing board for just the cost of purchasing it. And I think that's really valuable to a lot of people. So if you're someone that's not mechanically inclined and you want something that can compete at a very high level, this might be the answer for you. Now, since this came out, there's been some more development in the racing community. Lynn Power has a racing board now. I've not checked that out. I know that a lot of people have said good things about it, but it is a good bit different than this board. Very different standing platform, different trucks, and different power, of course. So I still think this has a great place in the market, especially at the price point. And I think the main deciding factor of is it for you is, are you dedicated to racing enough that you will only ride this board racing? Because I don't think this board should be ridden on the street. It's not built for that, doesn't have the clearance for that, and it definitely doesn't have the range for that. So if you're a dedicated person that wants to get into racing and has around 2,500 bucks, I think this is a great board for you. If you're in racing and your current board is like an entry-level e-skate, this is definitely a great upgrade for you because you already know your way around a board, has a regular thumb wheel throttle, and you can just sort of hop into it and upgrade your game. I think those are the two main people that want this. The hyper enthusiasts might already have a Stooge race board, which outclasses this quite a bit in power, or might have a DIY that is similar in power. But even myself with a really good DIY, I found this really fun, and honestly it's a nice change from my own DIY because it's a completely different standing platform, different height, different sort of truck performance. So I found it fun regardless. So if you want another board to add to your quiver, this is still a good purchase. I think that's enough yapping for the moment. Let's jump straight into the performance spec score. And I think this is really exciting to go through for a race board because that's what everyone really cares about, is how fast is it, how much, or how quickly can it brake, and how fast does it go? Well, I've got that data for you. All right, so PSPEC Score has a number of different things in it. And we're gonna start with the most exciting one for everyone, I think, acceleration. There's 3 parts of acceleration for me. I got 0 to 20 time, the 100 meter sprint, and then for a couple boards, I have a 0 to 30 time. So I'm gonna share that with you in this video. First up, 0 to 20 time, the MLR did really good. This is in max acceleration mode, S+, everything turned up as high as it can go. And it came in second place for production boards at 1.78 seconds. Pretty dang fast for a 0 to 20 time. The Phantom X was slightly ahead of it at 1.68, and then the Nomad N3, I got a max or min time of 1.97. Really, really quick, and definitely enough to throw you off the board if you're not paying attention, especially if you actually full throttle it, which honestly took me a couple tries to get to, so it was like ready for the exact acceleration curve. Because even though my own board is more powerful than it, obviously you can see 1.54 seconds, 0 to 20. It still takes a little bit of time to get used to the different throttle curves. So really impressive for that. 1.78 minimum time. Behind it is the other Nomad N1, Black Mamba, XOA Atlas Pro. I haven't tested too many really powerful boards on the channel yet, but we've got the MBS Agent coming up soon, and I think that's going to place pretty high on this chart as well. Next up, we might as well talk about the 0 to 30 time. This one is interesting because the boards will start to fall further from VESC at this 0 to 30 time usually. So our 0 to 30 time for the MLR was 4.16 seconds. It was actually third place in production boards behind the 2.68 seconds, ridiculous, of the Phantom X and the Nomad N3, surprisingly. I don't know if it's a limitation of my 16S2P battery or what, but this one really struggled with hitting the top speed that Meepo hopes that it will hit. Either way, still pretty good at third place in the 0 to 30 time. As for the 100 meter sprint, the Meepo MLR came in at a time of 8.53 seconds. Pretty good. Puts it in third place in the production boards behind the Phantom X at 7.03. Again, ridiculous time. 8.22 of the Nomad N3. And then actually Raceboard P1 was my 14S version of my raceboard. I haven't done a 0 to 30 time on my latest version because I just haven't found a good spot to do a full acceleration 0 to 30. I'll get around to it eventually, but yeah, pretty good performance. 8.53 seconds really hits a lot above the rest of the pack, reinforcing the fact that it is indeed a race board. Next up, the braking test. Now, braking on the MLR is a little bit difficult to get used to because of the curve. So we actually ended up turning it down for, I say we because I used the MLR for the urethane race at JKESC. We ended up tuning the throttle a little bit and turning down the braking curve. But in the braking testing, it performed really well. Obviously, that sort of ignores braking curve since you're just max throttling it anyway. And it came in third place behind the Nomad N1 and another race board phase for me. But first place in terms of production boards. Pretty good. 14.44 feet was its minimum distance. And the next production board behind that was the Aries X1. Shockingly, I don't know why that thing had such good brakes, but really did the job. And the next behind that is the Phantom X. Of course, great brakes, just had some issues with the JKESC D100S. Low speed braking, I think, is what killed it for that. But really good brakes on the MLR. Definitely enough to throw you off again if you're not paying attention and you full slam the throttle. So keep that in mind when you're out there on the track. Next up is stall torque, and man, this thing did incredible. Really putting up a good performance for a hobby wing, or it's not hobby wing, it's JKESC. For something that's not a VESC, it put up 78 Newton meters. Really impressive. The only board higher than that on my chart is the Phantom X, which came in at 104. And a bit behind that is the Nomad N1. And the N3 was pretty similar, but you know, I guess they changed the throttle curve a little bit, and the 0 mile-an-hour torque was a little bit different to sort of help with their throttle aggressiveness, I guess. I'm not trying to talk about other boards too much here, but in any case, the MLR did really good and performed really well. A bit behind the Phantom X, but this is 16S versus 21S, 90S versus 200, you know, big difference. So for 2,500 bucks, that's a lot of torque. Top speed is the last one of these specs besides range, and this is where mine sort of struggled a little bit. I'm not really sure exactly why mine struggled to get over 30 so much, but even at full charge, I was only able to max out at just under 32 miles an hour, 31.3 to be exact, and that puts it pretty far down on the production board list, behind 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 boards, so 9th place. Really not that impressive in terms of top speed. Now this is with the stock gear ratio of 4.3, of course. Go to the 3.1 ratio, you should get a little bit more top speed as long as it can provide the amps. I'm curious if the 16S 3P battery actually gets you a little bit higher top speed since it can provide more amps to the ESC. If you're not aware of how these ESCs usually work, a lot of the times your maximum battery current is not when you accelerate from a 0. It's somewhere in the higher range of your top speed. Not necessarily at the very top, somewhere in the middle, there's a max amps point that you'll come to. So I'm curious if this is hitting that and sort of maxing out the batteries before it's able to reach its maximum speed. I don't know, just thinking out loud. But yeah, not the greatest performance in top speed, but it'll still get you past a lot of other boards. And with the acceleration, you'll get there pretty quickly. So as long as you're good out of corners, you can still make really good use of 31.3 miles an hour. Now, range is not something that I would normally consider an essential thing on a race board type device, but it does matter in terms of time on the track, how many laps you can do, and stuff like that. So when I did my range test for the MLR, which you should check out, I did a video on that. I increased the average speed a bit and did a lot more harder accelerations, and we ended up with a total range of 12.25 miles, I believe it was. Yeah, exactly, 12.25 miles. I'm pretty sure that the 16S 3P will get you another couple miles, maybe 14, maybe a little more than that, but I think 12.25 is enough for most people, and honestly, you're probably just gonna throw this on a charger between your heats and your finals anyway, just to make sure that you have all your top speed, because the top speed does drop with the voltage, of course. This is a pretty common thing for most of these boards that are not VESC-based. VESC-based boards do a really good job at keeping the top speed high, even at low battery voltage, due to them being current control. There are 2 different control modes on here, but the default out of the box is duty control mode. So if you don't know what that means, I'll probably have to do another video on that, explaining what exactly the difference is, but it definitely feels different and it affects how the top speed drops with battery voltage. In any case, 12.25 miles of range, not terrible for a race board. I know mine gets a lot more, but I have an 18S6P in mine, so a lot more cells. Overall, the MLR did really good in terms of PSPEC and is one of the highest production board PSPECs on my entire chart, coming in at 73.6. Now that puts it in third place behind the Phantom X and the Nomad N3, and a bit ahead of Black Mamba and the rest of the production boards. Really impressive showing. Again, not too many super high performance boards on this chart yet, but definitely some respectable mid-high range boards. So it's, if anything, it goes to show that it is actually a race board. It has the performance to keep up with a lot of things in the market and will stomp some other boards that are more affordable. So yeah, pretty good showing from the MLR. All right, now that we've talked about the performance score, let's go over some more of the specs. In terms of dimensions, this thing is pretty massive. From tip to tip, we're coming in around 49 inches, including the motors and the front tires. The deck is about 43-ish inches, somewhere around there. And then the wheelbase is also about 43 inches. And the standing platform is somewhere around 25 from where your foot is in the back to where your foot is in the front. Pretty good size. I think some people may struggle with the longer standing platform, but for me, I'm around 5'11", and it pretty much worked for me. It's got about a 2-inch drop, and it gives you a really nice foot platform at the back to press on and support yourself against when you're accelerating. It's a pretty low board, gives you a pretty low center of gravity, and the clearance to the ground is about 2 inches from the enclosure to the ground all the way along the whole length of the deck. And this is definitely a problem for speed bumps and rough terrain, so this one is pretty scratched up. The board's heavy, but you can see the white scratch. Oh, it's kind of hard to see. There's white scratches on here and metal along the sides that have been scraped off from both the urethane race at eSkateCon and from terrain features in the parks that, or not the parks, the parking lots that I've raced in with this thing. Another unique thing about this is that the axle height is about 3 1/4. Standing platform is at about 3 3/4. So you're really only about ½ inch above the axle, and that gives you a really unique feel when it comes to turning through corners, and it sort of lets you sit into a corner, and it's part of what makes the Stooge magic happen and what gives you an advantage over boards that are a lot higher off the ground. The lower center of gravity makes it feel more controllable and makes it a little bit easier to sort of really push into a turn. And that really works on this board, and you'll feel it the first time you ride it. It's a completely different experience riding in line with the axles versus being way above them. And my race board is a bit above the axles. Not as bad as some, but I can definitely feel the difference going from that one to this one. The turning responds differently, and it feels different in the corner. So those are your dimensions. The other important one for me is deck width. This thing has an enormously wide deck. I love that, at 10.5 inches in the standing area and about 10 in the middle, but who cares about the middle? The standing area is great, super wide, really great for shifting your foot from one side to the other if you need to while you're turning, and just really good for foot support. I never really had any time where this deck was uncomfortable while racing. If anything, the flatter deck is better for me when I'm pressing my foot on there. But it does have a little bit of concave on the edges, which give you something good to grip onto when you're cornering. Now, this leads directly into the next thing I want to talk about, which is the bindings. Pretty lame setup here from Meepo. I don't know if this is fixed on the more recent boards, but the screw inserts or the threaded inserts in the deck don't line up with the bindings that they provide with the board, nor do they line up with the MVS F5 binding. So I have no idea what they were thinking with this whole pattern, but I have just one screw on the back part of this binding and one screw on the front. So your mileage may vary there. Maybe they fixed it on the newer boards, but on this one, it wasn't very useful. You can run with one screw, but it just sketches me out a little bit. And some feedback on these bindings that are provided. I think they're provided with every MLR, not 100% sure, but they're just not very good. This is the Trampa style binding. I much prefer the MVS F5. They're much more comfortable and a lot more sturdy. This one flexes a lot and bends while you're turning. You can almost feel the ladder straps stretching. It's just really not confidence inspiring. So do yourself a favor and get some genuine MVS F5s and you'll have a much better experience with your bindings. I've also seen people put toe hooks on here or go with no bindings at all. You can absolutely ride this with no bindings and do fine. It'll just feel different and you won't have the cornering authority that you get with a binding on the front of your board. I haven't seen too many people do two bindings on here. I think maybe one person, but yeah, pretty good setup for bindings as long as you only want to use one screw. All right, so I brought the camera up close to talk about this bit. This is a 3-link truck designed by, I think, a combination originally of Mad Skate, Meepo, and Stooge. I have no idea what happened with that collaboration, but this is what we ended up with. And this is I believe this is the latest version of the truck. It has the improved, higher quality steel all thread in the center as the hanger. It's got the really high quality CNC'd clamps. Really love these, much better than the old version that they were using on the OG 3-links. It's got a nut on either side here, a non-Nylock nut. So there's actually a guide that shows you how to put blue Loctite on here. So when you receive your board, what you're going to want to do is loosen these nuts. They probably will already be completely loose like mine were, but you'll loosen it, put some blue Loctite on there and tighten it down again to your preferred tightness. You've got your Heim bolt in the middle here, your bushings, and then the way you control how tight the bushings are is by tightening these nuts in for more turning resistance and out for less turning resistance. You can also adjust the angle at which the truck is I guess actuated. There's 3 positions on the base plate and then there's 2 positions on the hanger, and this will adjust how the trucks feel a lot. Generally, when you have a steeper angle, the trucks are going to react faster, and when you have a shallower angle, you're going to react slower. Basically what this ends up meaning is that you get more turn at a steeper angle and less turn at a shallow one. Compared to the front over there, I don't know if it's going to focus. Compared to the front, you can see that it's in the lowest spot on the base plate, which means it's the highest angle, and on the rear it's in the highest spot, which is the lowest angle. So less steer in the back, more steer in the front. That's the default setup. I ended up never changing it because it worked for me. You may find that you want them to be equivalent or some other configuration, but the option to change it is there. There are actually set screws in these holes already so that nothing gets stuck in the threads. So you'll need to take those out in order to move the link up and down. There's also a tightness jam nut on here that locks the length of this link. So when you change the position of it, you're going to need to take this screw off, loosen the jam nut, and then extend this. I forget what these are called, but you can extend it out so that it still falls in the same spot on the hanger. These trucks can be a little bit confusing. There's probably some other resources about adjusting them on the Meepo website. So I would give that a look. And if you can't find anything there, you can probably contact support and they'll probably be able to help you out. Or you can just ask Stooge directly and he'll probably help you as well. So that's sort of your 3-link truck on the MLR, some of the adjustments you can make. And I thought that would be useful to show. Oh, also while we're here, the track width of the wheels from contact surface to contact surface is around 14 3/4 inches. This is somewhat adjustable by moving these clamps in or out. You have some space between the motors on this hanger. Generally, with a shorter wheelbase or a shorter wheel width, you have more responsive board, and with a wider track width, it's less responsive. I left it at default. Honestly, it's been good for me. All right, let's talk about the RBEM score for this board. We rated a number of different things, and I've got a little bit to say about each of these different categories as we go through it. Starting off, we got build quality. Now, I rated this an 8 out of 10 for build quality, and there are a number of reasons for that. Main thing being, I think QC is a little bit lacking because almost all the bolts on my board came completely loose. That includes the link attachments on the base plate, the link attachments on the hanger clamps, the 3-link bushing adjustment, the Heim bolt nut, the clamps themselves, and that's on both the rear truck and the front truck. So if you don't tighten all of that stuff before you ride, there's a high chance that you may crash, because when the Heim bolt joint is loose, namely the bolt or the jam nut that actually holds the Heim bolt rotationally, your truck is free to sort of just flop around however you want. And the first time I was riding this, it was really wobbly, and I was really confused because I was like, these are 3 links, they shouldn't be performing like this. So I checked the bolts, and lo and behold, everything was loose. So that's definitely a big knock against build quality for me. I also think that this gasket that they used for the enclosure is a little bit cheap. And the rest of the build is fine. Nothing exemplary really, but it does the job, and I don't really have any other major complaints besides the fact that everything was loose. So yeah, not a bad job. 8 out of 10. Deck is up next. This deck is cool. It's a big old piece of carbon fiber that's extremely heavy. I didn't mention the weight in my spec breakdown, but it's 43 pounds, I believe, 43.7, something like that, altogether. And this is at the 16S2P battery. So with the 16S3P, it's even bigger than that, or it's even heavier than that. But this deck is good. There's not really anything else on the market like it. It's a very long and flat deck. I think it could stand to be maybe 2 inches shorter, and you'd have a more maneuverable board. It's very strong, no complaints there. I think it looks pretty cool, and it's pretty comfortable to stand on. So overall, got a 9 out of 10. I like it. The remote for this board is the Meepo J6S remote, and this thing really does the job. There's a number of things that I like about this that are better than other Hobbywing or JK remotes that I've seen. It has a full battery gauge on here with 10 bars. Really like that. Super good. Makes it easy to see exactly how much percentage you have left. You have a number of different things that you can see on the screen just by pressing the settings button. You can see voltage and current and motor temperature and ESC temperature, all really useful things. You can see your drive ratio, your wheel diameter, pretty much all the things that you can set, you can see there, including a trip meter and an odometer. To get into the settings, I believe it's 8 taps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you have a whole plethora of settings that you can change, including motor run mode, binding, brake lines, current lines, you name it. There's a lot of things to adjust in here. Really good job on Meepo with the amount of things you can adjust in here. And you can sort of tune it to your preferences. For me, I did end up adjusting the braking curves, and I found that made it a little bit more enjoyable to ride on the track, a little bit less jerky. But the remote does the job just fine. The thumb wheel has a good amount of throw. It feels better than other Meepo remotes. The screen is a bit bigger and more legible. And yeah, as USB-C, does the job. I don't really have any complaints about it. The battery life is also really good. So I've barely had to charge this thing, hardly ever. So good job to Meepo on the remote, and to JK, I guess, because that's probably part of it. So I gave it an 8 out of 10. No like super special features, but a good amount of adjustment, and it does what it needs to do. ESC is up next, and this JKESC is much better than the options that you had in the pre-production boards that had cutout issues and so forth. It's been super solid for me. The adjustability through the remote is good, and it has good power. I do think the acceleration is still a little bit on the unpredictable side. It really slams you into it if you're not prepared for it, so you have to sort of learn how the throttle curve works. And I really don't like the feeling of it hitting the target speed in duty cycle mode. So I might try the other mode that's available on the remote. But basically, once you get to a speed, it like locks you there, and you're just at that speed, at that throttle position on your remote. It feels weird coming from BESC, especially on a race board, when I might want to continue accelerating past that speed that I was aiming to get to. So pretty decent ESC overall. I didn't have a single issue with it at all. I never overheated or anything like that. Never did a cutout or anything. So I give it an 8 out of 10. There's always room to improve, and it's not a VESC, it's just not as smooth, but it's definitely got the power. Trucks and bushings, 9 out of 10. These 3-links are great. Honestly, they have some benefits over the regular 3-links. I think these are probably more durable than the regular 3-links. The clamps are much better. The drive mounting is much better. And I think that this base plate is better for a deck like this. It might not be as good for a deck where you don't have as much drop. Again, like I said, it says like almost a 2-inch drop. So I don't know how good they'll be for most people's DIY builds, but on this board, they're great. And the bushings are good as well. They're Riptides, of course. Since it's a collaboration with Stooge, they had access to the Riptide bushings. And yeah, you can sort of tune these to your heart's desire. And there aren't a lot of trucks that offer this amount of tunability, stability, and turnability. So good job to Meepo and Stooge on that collaboration. Really worked out, and it got 9 out of 10. Wheel options for this board, they're all right. These drives are pretty large, so you really don't want to go much lower than this 165mm size. You can probably go down to 6-inch tires if you want, but you're probably gonna scrape. And you can go all the way down to Mad 125s, which I did do at eSkateCon. I don't know if I have any pictures. I probably do. If I do, I'll put it on screen, but that's where we got some of these scrapes from being so low to the ground. But it was fun to ride on the Mad eSkate wheels and experience how slippery urethane is. But yeah, you don't really have a ton of wheel options. Meepo does make a couple different adapters for this gear drive though, so if you have the ability to adapt to a different wheel, you could potentially put larger tires on here, although I'm not sure why you would want to do that. You could probably adapt BRPs to this if you tried. I didn't personally make an adapter for it because I haven't seen the need. Also, the Lin Power tires fit directly on these hubs, and I think they're a better option than the Meepo ones. I also believe the M Board's slicks should fit on these wheels, but I haven't tried it. It might be a tight fit since those are so wide, but there's a couple different tire options, probably a couple different wheel options if you look into other cores, but overall, not bad. I gave it a 3.3 out of 5. Next up is water resistance. The enclosure in the back is sealed reasonably well. The gaskets should hold out most dampness. You've also got a decent gasket coming around the underside of the enclosure and some decent sealing on the cables at the back. Not the best in the world, but not terrible. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Customer service for Meepo has been up and down throughout the years. I think it's in a decent spot right now, but could use some improvement in response time. And I think that they're trying to solve that by hiring people in California to work for them, namely Eric and his newest associate, Jialong, my friend. And they're running customer service out of San Diego, or out of, I don't know exactly where they are, somewhere in Southern California. And I think that's looking up for Meepo. I think that'll do great things for the US side customer service. I do also believe they're fulfilling boards from a warehouse there as well. So if you're ordering a Meepo in the US, you're probably going to get it a lot faster than you used to getting it from China. But they still only get a 3.5 out of 5 because it's a gradual improvement thing. If you have anything to say about Meepo customer service, leave it down in the comments below. I'm curious to hear what you think. Final thing, price and value. I gave this a 4.8 out of 5 because I think the value on this board is extremely high. Right now, it's actually marked down to, I think, $21.99, which is a really good deal for a board like this. And that's the 16S 3P variant as well. So for the amount of Raceboard that you get here, I think it's worth it. If you really want to get into racing and this is something that you really enjoy doing, this is definitely a worthwhile investment, and will definitely give you the ability to reach into the upper ranks of shorter track racing. So all of that put together, we have our full RBEM score of 56.6, and that puts it in a an 8th place position in my rankings, behind the Ace-Deck Nomad N1, the Aries X3, the Flex Pro, the Flex Paragon, the Nomad N3, the Flex 2 Pro, and the Phantom X. Now, it might be kind of weird that it ranked so low here, but these things add up pretty quickly, and the difference in points between this top part is not really that much. So, as Raceboards go, obviously it's not going to be as good of a daily board as the Phantom X, for example, because it has so much more capability and range and stuff like that. Component choice is obviously going to be a big difference there as well. And yeah, just because it has a lower score doesn't mean that it's bad. It's great for its use, and I really like it. That weight was 43.66. A comfortable cruising speed is about 30 miles an hour, and it comes with a really powerful 15 amp charger. It's pretty big, but it does charge the board quickly through the XT60 on the ESC enclosure. Editor Ryan here, just interjecting to comment on my third point in the intro, why I think the MLR is what racing needed. Well, if you look at the numbers of e-skate in search terms and just in the general population, it has been on a downtrend since 2020, when people were buying lots of electric skateboards with their stimulus checks. Nowadays, a lot of people are on EUC, scooter, bike, etc. So racing is something that a lot of people sort of gravitate towards because honestly, there's some forms of transportation that are just better than e-skate for certain applications. But the racing scene is still quite popular, and honestly, there's a couple new leagues that have just started up, and I think a lot of people will want to participate in those. It's not that a regular board can't participate in these races, for sure, but a lot of these quote-unquote regular boards have trucks that just aren't designed for this application. They don't have enough power, and the MLR really fills a spot at a reasonable price point where you can get really good racing performance out of a board straight out of the box. So I think that's why racing needed it. It's a really easy barrier to entry, really low barrier to entry, and you can just hop on it and start racing. So what do I think about the Meepo MLR? Is it the next board you should buy, or should you only get it if you're a racing enthusiast? Well, I do think that you should only really get it if you're a racing enthusiast. But that's because it's so specifically made for racing. It doesn't have a ton of range, it doesn't have a lot of ground clearance, and honestly the deck is not really comfortable enough to commute on, but it does do racing really well. And I think it's a great upgrade over most production boards for the racing scene. because it has the great combination of stability, turnability, and adjustability that you need in order to tailor yourself into the best racer you can be. Now, there's one thing I think it really needs, and that is definitely more top speed. So if Meepo is going to make another version of this in the future, hopefully they'll upgrade the power and the top speed, because who doesn't need more power on a racing board? It is already very quick and up there with some of the fastest production boards you can buy, but it can always get better. And it definitely needs a bit more top speed, because this is definitely a short track focused board more than long track like ABS or Sonoma or some of the other tracks that TEF1 has been racing on recently. So I think this board has a lot going for it. I think Meepo did a really good job with this thing. And if you have never raced a 3-link board before, this will definitely be a step up for you over your TKP, your DKP, or RKP, in my opinion. It's also a step up over channel trucks, but I don't really think there's many people racing on channel trucks nowadays. So yeah, but really great job to Meepo. I think this thing is definitely a buy if you're interested in the racing scene. The price point is not too high. It's definitely up there as one of Meepo's most expensive boards. I think it's probably the most expensive. The only thing that would come close is probably a Hurricane Ultra 4-wheel drive, but I haven't really looked recently. So yeah, overall, awesome job, Meepo. I keep saying it, but I'm just really happy with this board. And I've got some fun stuff planned for this in the future. So make sure you get subscribed and stay tuned for that. We're going to be doing some DIY content with this thing. I think that will be super cool. Thank you so much to Meepo for sending this over for my demo. And I've really enjoyed my time with it. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching. Stay safe, keep on riding, and peace out.